You're listening to Myers-Briggs Question Corner with Edythe Richards.
This question is from a lovely lady named Lisa. I'm an INFP. I work in an office with people who are very different from me, and it's a struggle. I don't fit into their clique, and it's exhausting trying to play their games, but I feel like I have to just to survive. What suggestions do you have for putting my best foot forward and succeeding in an office that feels unfriendly? I'm first going to provide an overview of the INFP type, share some workplace strengths and weaknesses, and then provide some steps Lisa and other INFPs who struggle with the same issue can take to yield greater workplace and career satisfaction. First, though, a point I'd like to make for anyone who's struggling with fitting into a particular workplace or struggling in a career or with people who don't seem to be a good fit. Ask yourself honestly if you're daydreaming that the grass is really greener, or if you're ready to take the leap to change workplaces, industries, or even careers. If a change is truly in order, think about what your motivation is for that change. Do you really dislike the work you're doing? Is it your boss? Is the environment going through some kind of turmoil and there's a possibility that things will change? If you've stuck with your current miserable position out of fear, as many people do, dig deep to pinpoint what you're really afraid of. Fear can be linked to many causes: self-esteem issues, parent expectations, traumatic events in your life, and change can be scary, but it can also be worthwhile. If you're struggling with where to start, or even if you want to change, please reach out to a professional career counselor or coach who can guide you by asking the right questions. You are most definitely not alone in this process, and there are people who are skilled at helping and truly want to help. Now, let me give you an overview of the INFP type. INFPs have an inner core of values that guide their interactions and decisions, and they make it a priority to clarify these values and live being true to them. Therefore, work for the sake of work or meaningless routine is one of the worst things that can happen to an INFP. It can cause them to become apathetic or even rebellious. It can also result in the INFPs undervaluing themselves. This is why we may not see as many INFPs as other types in the corporate world. Many corporate workplaces are impersonal, and it's hard for INFPs to do what they love for a living because they have to adhere to other people's guidelines, which for an INFP is inauthentic and pointless. Office disagreements, no matter how petty, and unfriendly work environments are particularly stressful for an INFP, and they are apt to take all criticism, constructive or not, personally. INFPs in particular may have difficulty in finding the ideal career, in part because of the word ideal. They have a vision in mind of what they want, yet reality may not follow suit. They may make several starts and stops in their career until they find a comfortable place for themselves. For many INFPs, the people around them are just as, if not more important than the work they do. If they're surrounded by a few awesome people, that can make even the most boring job tolerable. If you, like Lisa, are an INFP type who is trying to find a career or workplace that's a good fit, I'd like to invite you to tune into my podcast, Myers-Briggs for Midlife Career Changers, which talks specifically about career paths and work environments for INFP types to consider. You can find it on iTunes, Spreaker, and on my website, www.atopcareer.com. Any Myers-Briggs type is going to be happiest and most effective when they're using their natural strengths. The late, great Otto Kroger, who was a pioneer in type theory and author of several publications, stated that if you spend 51% of your time doing work that supports your natural type preferences, you'll likely be satisfied and therefore successful. To find out how these may play out in the workplace, I'm going to talk about some of the natural strengths of INFPs. First, due to their dominant cognitive function of introverted feeling, INFPs are natural counselors and love to help others. They tend to be great listeners, very compassionate and empathic, gravitating towards work for the greater good. Many have a natural healing ability. Second, every INFP I've ever known has had some innate creative talent. Whether it's with words, music, painting, or sculpture, INFPs tend to express themselves through art and creativity. If they have a job that's the antithesis of this, I'll bet that they have a very active side gig as an artist or are involved in some type of creative endeavor. Other strengths include loyalty, independence, future-focused, and idealism. It's hard for many of these things to translate neatly into a career path, which is why so many INFPs struggle. Nevertheless, INFPs are warm, social people who make it a point to understand others, which is why they're such a pleasure to have as coworkers and bosses. Now, on to weaknesses. Overly sensitive, reserved, daydream too much, fear of conflict, perhaps being naive or too selfless. These are all quote-unquote weaknesses I've heard to describe INFPs. It's important to keep in mind that everyone has things they need to work on, and we all need to learn to compensate. If you're an INFP and can relate, this doesn't mean that you need to abandon what's authentic to you. Keep doing all the things that make you the wonderful person you are, but know that there are times and situations where you will be at a disadvantage. And the unfriendly work situation you're describing, Lisa, is one of those. Succeeding in an unfriendly work environment is going to depend on finding ways to honor your deeply held values while managing your workload. If you decide to stay with this job, that may mean accepting that it will be full of compromises, and you'll need to come to terms with the fact that it won't live up to your ideal. This is really hard for INFPs because their ideals are substantial, perhaps more so than any other Myers-Briggs type. Here are 3 strategies for you to consider, Lisa. First, take time to determine what's meaningful to you. Because INFPs are driven by their strong moral codes, it's important to understand what true success means to you. It can't be defined by other people, and it most likely won't be anything tangible or material. So take time to think about this. Write in a journal or talk to people you trust. Second, once you have your purpose, make sure your moral code is engaged with the work you're doing. INFPs can become quickly disillusioned and disconnected from work and the people around them if they feel as though they're not true to their purpose. Now, some INFPs will find that they need to have an 8-to-5 job that's not their passion or purpose because it's a means to an end. If this is the case for you, make sure that you live your purpose outside of your job. This is very important to your overall well-being. Third, being able to take feedback well is a challenge for INFPs. They feel personally wounded when someone tells them, even in a constructive way, that they have room to improve. It's incredibly important to work on this. Learning to develop a thicker skin will help you not allow your emotions to get the best of you. Don't take constructive criticism to heart, but think of it as an opportunity to learn a different skill set. Instead of avoiding conflict, work on standing up for yourself so that your workmates can see you for the competent professional you are. To sum it up, remember though that you have plenty of wonderful success qualities. How you choose to apply them is up to you, Lisa. Thanks very much for your question, and I'm wishing you all the best in your workplace and career.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you'd like to hear more, or you'd like to submit a question yourself, then you can find us at www.atopcareer.com. Until next time. MBTI and Myers-Briggs are registered trademarks of the MBTI Trust.